Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining the International Relations Council for this deep dive into the growing influence of cryptocurrency. This program is part of the IRC lecture series, which since our first speaker, Eleanor Roosevelt in 1955, has offered nuanced insight and broad perspective on critical global issues. My name is Matthew Hughes, and I serve as the Executive Director of the International Relations Council in Kansas City, and we're so glad to have you with us today. The International Relations Council strengthens Kansas City's global perspective by maintaining an active dialogue around world events, global issues, and their impact on our community. As a nonpartisan, educational, nonprofit organization, the IRC values informed civil discourse, accessibility, and substance as we work to sharpen our community's 21st century global acumen. Whether you're joining us live this evening or watching the recording of this program later on, we invite you to learn more about the International Relations Council, including other upcoming events and how to join the IRC as a member on our website at irckc.org. We hope you'll be an active participant this evening. We certainly welcome your thoughtful questions through the course of the conversation using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. And do check out and share other upcoming conversations in the IRC lecture series as we consider a range of critical global issues in the coming months. Since the formation of Bitcoin in 2009, cryptocurrencies have continued to evolve their prominence and disruptive role in the world economy. Now, with the number of decentralized currencies at an all-time high, concerns have emerged around their weight in the stock market and broader economy, the implications of an unregulated global economy, and precautions and opportunities that individuals, banks, and national and international agencies should consider. Proponents of financial freedom have touted the rise of cryptocurrencies, but global economic experts question the viability of promoting a new and untested digital asset. To help us make sense of all of this, it's now my pleasure to welcome someone who knows just a thing or two about crypto. Yaya Fanusie is an Adjunct Senior Fellow at the Center for a New American Security. His research focuses on the national security implications of cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology. He spent 7 years as both an economic and counterterrorism analyst in the CIA. He's testified before Congress multiple times on illicit financing issues and has even briefed President George W. Bush personally on terrorism threats. He's founder of Cryptocurrency AML Strategies, an advisory firm that helps financial institutions and technology firms address money laundering and terrorist financing risks associated with digital assets. He received an MA degree in International Affairs from Columbia University and a BA in Economics from UC Berkeley. Yaya, it's such a pleasure to have you here with us virtually in Kansas City, and we certainly look forward to learning from you this evening. The floor is yours.
Oh, thank you very much, Matthew. Can you hear me okay?
Sure can. Thanks a lot.
Okay, great. I'm happy to be here with everyone, and I'm going to share my screen. So just hold on very quickly. And before I do, I want to just say a few things. We're going to hopefully touch on some of the issues that that Matthew mentioned. As he mentioned, my background is in national security, so I do have a bit of an angle. But I think even though I'll be focusing on some of the national security implications, hopefully this will help you help the audience understand this technology in general. So why don't we go and let me get my screen shared. Just give me a quick second here. This is a 2021 moment, obviously. All right, let me share, because that's here we go. All righty there. Okay, so
Yaya, sorry, I think we might have the wrong screen up.
I'm sorry?
We might have the wrong screen showing. If you want to try resharing very quickly.
Do you, oh, stop. No,
Yep.
Oh, I thought I did it. I switched, so it didn't switch?
It didn't switch the share, yeah.
Okay, all right.
I think we had you on there earlier. Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right, let me try again. So Matthew, let me know if this does not.
It doesn't look like we've got it this time either, I'm sorry to say.
Correct. Okay, hold on a second. and just hold on a second and see if it changes. Did it change
There,
now?
we've got you now. We sure do.
Okay. Sorry for that technical technical difficulty.
No worries.
All right. So here we go. So important to understand here that we're going to be talking about not only cryptocurrencies, but blockchain technology and other fintech. But the key issue is that their national security relevance is rising. So what I want you to think about is I want you to think about cryptocurrency technology in a lot of different ways. Think of it as an opportunity and as a risk, even when we're talking about national security, an opportunity and a risk. And we're gonna hit some of these things, and let's separate them into strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. But when we talk about threats, it's important to think about short-term versus long-term. All right. And this is always important, even though right now the price of crypto is relatively, it has gone down. But as you see that yo-yoing of the crypto pricing of the crypto price, it has a real-time effect in terms of other people's activity, and illicit activity, which is one of the things I focus on, tends to go up. But what's even more important, some fun imagery for you all, is that there is this development of cryptocurrency technology now merging with mainstream commerce, whether it's creating of stable coins that you've heard about with like the Libra, now DM project. And this Amazon job is actually a posting from I think last week or maybe the week before. Amazon is looking for a digital currency and blockchain product lead. What is that? What are they doing? They say they're not going to accept crypto, they're not going to accept Bitcoin, but something obviously is in the works if Amazon is hiring a digital currency lead. What does this all mean? I want you to think about this as us being in a period of digital money formats, different digital money formats, and they are sort of in competition a little bit. Now, the main money formats, digital money formats that we know about, because everyone will say, I already do digital currency. I can already hear through my headphones. I hear some of you saying that now. What's with this Bitcoin? I already do digital transactions all the time with my Venmo and online banking and PayPal. Yes, that is a format of digital money, but it's a little bit different than this newer format, which was created in 2008 of Bitcoin. And we won't get too technical for this, but the key point here is that these digital formats, the new digital format is different. The previous online banking, you always had a financial institution that pretty much facilitated the transactions, right? You have Venmo, you have PenPal, you have Zelle. You have this intermediary that you need in order to transfer a value digitally over the internet. But with Bitcoin, it's different. Bitcoin is really a pure digital asset, and it's only possible because of computer science. It's a little bit different than some of the other formats. And this blockchain, again, I'm not getting very technical, but I want to go through one thing which shows why Bitcoin was such an interesting invention, why it was a breakthrough. Even if you're not sure that Bitcoin is valuable, this invention was a breakthrough. The internet has always been great for sending information, right? Sending regular data, books. It revolutionized information. The internet has been terrible at sending value. When I say terrible, it didn't work in the same way, because when you send information data, you simply copy that information. You copy a file, a JPEG, a photo, and you copy it and you send it to someone else via email. That's easy with info, but with value, you can't do that. If I have an amount of $100, I can't make a digital copy of it and then send you $100 and then I still have $100. That would be double spending, and it wouldn't work that way. We couldn't do digital financial transactions that way. That's why online banking, PayPal, they would take this role of making sure they credit and debit accounts, and they sort of do everything on the back end. And then you just get a message that your money has transferred. Your money didn't really transfer, just your liability with that financial company has transferred. But again, I don't want to get too technical. What Bitcoin did is it crafted this really interesting way through this blockchain method of allowing you to send a unique digital value to another recipient, and to do it in this sort of decentralized way where you didn't need one financial intermediary. It operates off of a ledger database that everyone can see and everyone can verify the information. So when people say they're sending Bitcoin, don't think about like some digital money going through the cyberspace and it's like, oh, and it finally reaches someone's wallet. Don't think of it in 3D. Think of it almost like in 2D. What do I mean? What a Bitcoin transaction is, a blockchain transaction is really just the transfer of ownership on a ledger. The ledger says, I have 1 Bitcoin, and then I send in a command, I broadcast this change, I'm going to send it to Matthew. And then the next few minutes, the ledger says Matthew has 100 Bitcoin or 1 Bitcoin, whatever I said, and that Yaya does not have the Bitcoin. And so this ledger is just your record. So all you're doing when we say we're sending Bitcoin, we're just actually updating the record, and it shows different bits of ownership. So this is a different way of digital money transaction. Some may say it's not really money because we're just talking about some address that says, you know, one Bitcoin here. But the idea is that this is still, in terms of the internet, this is how you could do value. This is how you could defeat the double spending problem, which we had with the internet. So Bitcoin, whether it's valuable or not, technologically, it was a breakthrough. All right, so let's get to this. This was a breakthrough because it solved the problem. It also, this technology allows for this record to be kept. So you have digital assets and you can check the ownership of the assets. You can check what's on this ledger and you can follow it, right, for auditability. And you can also have tiny, tiny payments. Think about this. Can you send half a cent to someone via Bank of America? Not to pick on Bank of America, right? But you can't, or via Venmo. Can you say, hey, let me give you 0.003 of a penny? But with this ledger, if you use the blockchain, yeah, because all it is just a digital allocation. So why not divide it into 0.0000? So many of you may say, why would I need to do that? I don't owe anyone 0.001 pennies. But the idea is now, maybe we could find a way to have smaller transactions. Maybe there could be a way, or there could be value to this. And potentially less friction, because the idea is that this value can be sent directly between parties. You don't have the same siloed structure that you have when you do digital payments through the banking system. So in theory, this should be easier, or if not easier, it should be quicker, or it should have less friction. And also, I'll let you think about this. We're in an era of the Internet of Things. Everything is connected to the internet, right? I mean, this is happening more, especially after the pandemic. So what does this mean? This means that the idea of there being a value or a money which is sort of intrinsic to cyber activity, it actually kind of fits. We've been struggling as a society, as a civilization, I might say, in terms of being very digital, but our money system isn't natively digital. We built up this structure to try to transfer digital value. But not until Bitcoin did we have at least an example of digital money that is truly internet money. So that's why it's interesting. So of course, there are weaknesses, right? First of all, this system that I explained without getting very technical, it's a very sort of, it's a complicated system, right? It's all these independent nodes that confirm transactions. We're not getting into all that detail right now. But the idea is that this has problems, right? It doesn't really scale, or it has not scaled. If you're thinking about transactions like what Visa and MasterCard and even PayPal could do, or WeChat and Alipay. So, it hasn't scaled. The issue of even how does this protocol get governed? Who governs it? If there's not one entity, there's not a company, there's not a country. This is just open source software that anyone can participate in. So that could be a weakness. Some people say it's a strength, but if you're going to build, you can't build an economy off of that, although El Salvador is trying to, as a little teaser. And it's experimental. And also, there are lots of different blockchains, and they don't all talk to each other. They're not interoperable. So, these are limitations. You have thousands of blockchains, but not really a way for them all to interact. And regulation. And that's one of the things that I actually focus on. the US has actually been good with the anti-money laundering regulations, I'd actually say, for cryptocurrencies, but that isn't the case around the world. So that's a weakness. So what are the opportunities? Yeah, maybe the efficiency, maybe some of the programmability, because now maybe we could program contracts within payments in a way that we can't do with our digital money that works on the banking system. And then maybe even giving more access to capital and credit. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's stuff called decentralized finance. Maybe we'll get into that. And just the fact that honestly, what Bitcoin did is it sort of sparked innovation, because now central bankers, they don't want to use Bitcoin, but now they're thinking about how they could make the monetary systems of their countries more dynamic, more advanced, and offer more services, maybe by borrowing, at least in principle, some of the aspects of either blockchain technology or other software technology, and to integrate that with central bank money. So when we talk about the threats, and let's get into the national security conversation, 3 buckets. How could this be used badly now, which is happening? What are the emerging innovations? And what are potential systemic long-term risks? This is whenever people talk about, oh, crypto is going to do this, or here's the risk, you really have to walk them down and say, okay, it depends on if you're talking about short-term, long-term, medium-term. Because some things aren't going to happen right now. Some things can be mitigated. So the short term, the first bucket of risk, this is what we see, and this is what's on the news: ransomware, drug use, drug laundering, darknet websites, right? People hacking cryptocurrency exchanges. So these are real threats. This is the realm of cyber meeting other illicit crime. There's something that I've actually looked at the past couple of years, is actually terrorist groups experimenting, first with crowdfunding. And here's some social media posts of one organization, Hamas's military wing, the Al-Qassam Brigades. 2019, they started doing crowdfunding, asking people to raise Bitcoin. The first time I saw a campaign like this was a campaign in 2016, which was a designated terrorist group. They were raising money on social media. And then one day I saw they posted on Twitter, they were trying to raise money for weapons and bombs and mortars, et cetera. And they have a little QR code. They have a little QR code here in their graphic. That is a link to their Bitcoin address. So this was when I started looking at and analyzing how terrorists could use cryptocurrencies. And there have been more of those. And I'll just, I don't have time to go through all of them, but here are just some screenshots. These are actual case studies that I've looked at, where this is a group that was in Syria. And here are just some of their postings. They were trying to solicit Bitcoin funds. They were very sort of public about it. I mean, they were on the Telegram channel, they posted videos, and I've sort of blocked out the Bitcoin address because I don't want anyone to donate to any of this. But that's what they did. And there was publication, I even published about this. But here's the thing: a lot of this cryptocurrency crowdfunding has been relatively unsuccessful, raising hundreds and thousands of dollars. There is maybe an exception with Hamas, because Hamas is a much more well-known organization and has raised maybe about $100,000 of Bitcoin over the past couple of years. But generally, these attempts have been moderately successful, and we've seen adaptation. We've seen groups seek other types of cryptocurrencies. We see them add tutorials, like they're teaching people on the learning curve. They're helping them along the learning curve of their crypto knowledge, their crypto IQ. And without getting too technical, there's a difference here where we see people moving from custodial wallets, which are basically, when you have a cryptocurrency wallet, it's hosted by an exchange. It's like a website, and they sort of have the wallet. It's like in an account, and the institution hosts it for you. The problem, if you're a terrorist, is that organization could then turn you over to law enforcement. They could find out who you are, or the law enforcement could go to them and say, hey, we see this transaction. Can you please close this guy's account? Because the blockchain has the record of transactions. They're public. So those wallets are less risky. They're easier to use. And so that's what most people use, but they're risky. risky for illicit activity. We're seeing people move to non-custodial wallets, which are sort of like wallets that you can just download and no institution has to manage them for you. And there are lots of abilities. We've even seen the adaptation where a group like Hamas actually switched to, they got a little bit more sophisticated in their crowdfunding. We don't have time to go into that, but just take my word for it, and I can explain later if you have questions. We've seen experimentation, we've seen these groups get a little bit more sophisticated with the technology. But the good news is that there are tools that can fight this. This is not the end of the world, that Bitcoin now is going to allow terrorists to just, do all types of stuff. There are lots of tools, there's regulation. It's really just the same sort of law enforcement and intel work that goes into other illicit finance. Now it's just another technological tool. And even the authorities to deal with this, most of them are already on the books. So there are lots of tools. Here are just some screenshots. There are tools that people use to be more private. And a lot of this is for privacy. But some of this is also to, some of these tools, like to have non-custodial wallets, are to help people evade surveillance on the blockchain, since the blockchain is public. Okay. But again, so there's this tension in the crypto space between privacy and security, because Bitcoins don't have identity attached to them. You don't sign up, you don't get a Bitcoin wallet and the wallet says, this is Yaya's wallet. It's only if you go to an exchange. So there's this tension because people don't want everyone to see what they're doing. So they want privacy, but then obviously illicit actors could use that as well. And so I like to sometimes put up this graphic here showing this is the old tools of the trade in the old days of international espionage. What would a Russian, a Soviet spy need? He would need weapons, right? He would need an ID, money, secure communications on the left. But on the right, what is the Russian in 2016 need to mount an operation? He just needs access to the internet and access to Bitcoin. So there have been Russian, operations, cyber operations against the United States that were funded in cryptocurrencies, in Bitcoin. And because, again, crypto is the money for the internet. So I want to jump through this because I want to get to your questions. Second bucket is the fact that we have lots of innovations happening. We're not going to go through them, but there are things like privacy coins. There are some exchanges which are not managed by one person. These are decentralized exchanges. There's also this new innovation of what happens when people don't need to cash out their money and they actually can just spend with crypto. Then they don't need to go to an institution to cash out where their ID could be checked. So these are some of the innovations and some of the developments that haven't scaled, but could impact our regulatory approach in terms of how do we handle this technology. And then there's the question of how do we deal with these things? There are privacy coins that, yeah, they don't give a record of transactions, right? How do you stop that? You really can't, because the software is open source. Maybe you can make it less mainstream, but it's difficult to stop. So two ecosystems are developing in crypto. I know I've been talking about a lot of the illicit stuff, but just understand that I think two things are happening. One, the crypto space is getting more formalized. It's getting more regulated. So there's going to be an above ground. You're going to see institutions, right? Big institutions are getting and investing in this technology. At the same time, there is going to be a niche. There's going to be an underground that will be more anonymous, that will support pseudonymous transactions, but that's not going to be mainstream. It's going to kind of like be Tor, that allows you to operate on the internet without people knowing where you're transmitting from. I think you can see the same thing. There will still be tools to keep an anonymity in the cryptocurrency space, but they're not going to be accepted so much in the mainstream regulated space of crypto. So two ecosystems, because the technology world always says move fast and break things. So technology is always going to kind of be on the edge, always challenging the framework. All right, let's end with the bucket 3, which is the big question. People always say, is Bitcoin going to displace the US dollar? And the spoiler alert, no, not in the short term, right? Because there's so much that goes into the power of the US economic system and our financial system. But here's the thing to think about when we think about what could happen in the long term. Well, number one, anyone can create a cryptocurrency, and Venezuela tried to. It was a sort of not a really good attempt, but technically, it's not very hard just to create a cryptocurrency. But let's think about another country that's doing something different. China is not creating a cryptocurrency. China is actually piloting a digital central bank currency, its own digital currency, the digital yuan, or the ECNY as it's being called. And China is investing in this blockchain technology. Why? Because China is focused on fintech, financial technology development. So it's really an interesting foreign policy issue, because it also means that the Chinese Communist Party, as this new digital currency goes out, it actually will allow them to gather more data, to surveil more transactions. It's sort of financial state infrastructure. And so this is something that we're watching in the foreign policy space. Russia, similarly, Russia is also piloting a digital ruble. Many Russian banks are sanctioned, and Russian politicians have been saying for years that they want to use blockchain technology to evade US and EU sanctions. So this is something, I mean, it's just, something we're seeing. This is a little funny thing. It's a quote. It's not a true quote, but here you have, leader of Russia and Iran, and I'm having them say sanctions, right? The SWIFT banking system is the mainstream banking system, but Bitcoin does not go through that system. So the idea is, could these states use cryptocurrencies or some other alternative digital currency and then not be vulnerable to US sanctions? Not in the short term, but in the long term. Iran is investing in blockchain technology, right? So in the long term, a lot of these nation states are trying to find a way to build up a new value transfer system, a new way of operating with digital money that is less vulnerable to US influence, because US influence is in the banking system as it is. So anyway, and remember, blockchain technology is based on open source sound software. So it's very difficult to just stop it, right? So anyway, in the short term, I'm not concerned about sanctions evasion so much, even with Venezuela, Iran, even with North Korea, although North Korea is earning a lot of money by hacking crypto. What do I worry about in the long term? If major nations do decide to use an alternative value transfer system that is outside the rails of our current banking system. If you were to see that, if you were to see international trade with a major power, like let's say China, using these alternative digital currency systems, then that would be something of concern. But it's not going to happen, in 2022 necessarily. So I'll leave you with the banking system, right? It was once, right, based on gold, the US dollar. What would the world look like if our economies were really based on data, were really based on information more than paper money or more than a physical gold? That's not the case today. But if you think about the importance of data, fintech is sort of where we're going. And I'll leave you with that. This is going to be a bit of a cat and mouse game when it comes to the illicit risks. But this is a development. This is simply technology. This is how the world is moving. And it's important to stay on top of the game. I know I focused a lot on national security, but I hope by seeing this through this lens, you're getting a sense of why this technology is important and shouldn't be dismissed, even for just the non-national security discussion. This is a real important stage that we're in the format of money. So that's me. That's who I am, and I will stop sharing and happy to give it back to you, Matthew.
Yeah, what an incredible overview. I'm giving you a standing ovation here in the office because I think, the challenges that we hear about at the IRC a lot regarding crypto, and you get this all the time, I'm sure, is people saying, what is it, right? Much less, how do you actually use it? I'd like to start though with another aspect of national security, if we could, and that's economic stability. We're hearing a lot about inflation these days. We've obviously been through a very rocky and challenging time in the midst of COVID. And Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies have seen that swing as well. What accounts for the dramatic volatility that we've seen in cryptocurrency in recent months in particular? How would you explain that, and what does that mean for the economy as a whole?
Well, I guess I can say a couple of things. I mean, one, so I don't think anyone can tell you precisely what, like, what accounts for, let's say, the up one day. I mean, sometimes there are things that happen that, like, some signals, like Elon Musk may tweet, and depending on if his tweet is good or bad, the price of Bitcoin will go up or down. So you have that. But more broadly, I think, just so you know, like, well, what is the value based on? It's market demand. So the value of a the value of a Bitcoin is based on the trading demand for it. So on exchanges, how much are people willing to pay for that cryptocurrency, for that Bitcoin or some other currency or cryptocurrency? So that's what it's based on. So beyond that, so that's how the price is set. Now, why does it go up and down? Why is it so volatile? Here's the thing I'll say is that there is a bit of a concern that there could be price manipulation. And I'm saying this as someone who has, had crypto invest. I'm not like a no bad crypto is bad sort of person. But I will say, even as someone who has, is close to the crypto space, there's a lot of stuff in the background that I think could be manipulating the price. But the good thing, though, is that I don't think that is impacting broader economic stability, because, right, most people aren't using Bitcoin. And, fortunately, I think we're at the point where the fall in Bitcoin, when it happens, as it often does, doesn't impact the rest of the economy. It will affect people who are over leveraged in Bitcoin, maybe.
Yeah, I'm remembering a pre-pandemic trip that I took to Argentina. I was in a mall in Buenos Aires, and there was an ATM where you could withdraw in the local currency.
A crypto ATM or Bitcoin ATM, they call them.
Right. And, we've all heard the story about, what was it, 10 or 11 years ago, the fellow who used 10,000 Bitcoin to order pizza. Is that right?
Yeah, when the price for Bitcoin was whatever it was, however many cents one Bitcoin was, yeah.
Oh, it's incredible. And it makes me wonder, I think a lot of people feel maybe disconnected from cryptocurrency because they're trying to figure out what is the use of it in their daily lives. Are we seeing more of an acceptance of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies in daily transactions? I know that PayPal and Venmo and others now have ways to use that. But,
I will say that crypto and blockchain in general is still waiting for that killer app. It has now. There's mainstream recognition, especially younger, Gen Z, millennials are much more, are much more interested in it. In fact, here's a note: my son had some Bitcoin before he had his bank account. So that's just a little aside, but I'm sorry. I should have mentioned myself.
No, that's all right.
The killer app.
Yeah.
So the uses. So here's how to know if it is like truly mainstream. The killer app. So for the internet, I'm old enough to know when I didn't have an email account. I'm actually that old. And I remember when I got an email account. For the internet, I think people would say email was the killer app. Email was the application. It's an application that pretty much became indispensable, that everyone would have or would use. That has not happened with crypto. Most of the activity in the crypto space is around speculation. So that's why I say that is a weakness. It has not broken out yet. Now, that does not mean that this technology will not be important. The reason why I think we should pay attention to it is, think about the internet. The internet in the 1970s, there was the beginnings of the internet. The internet took about 30 years, from like the late 60s to maybe 83, as we would say, right? The internet, if in the 70s, all these different computer companies had said, let's make an internet, it wouldn't have worked. The internet was created because there was academic research iterating for decades, and then they created this infrastructure. The problem or challenge with Bitcoin is you don't have any sort of united effort. You have a lot of different individual companies trying to make the next blockchain app, trying to make the next cryptocurrency. And I think, I actually think that's why, cryptocurrency is still just like disjointed, that there's a lot of stuff going on, but we haven't had that breakthrough yet. And that's just where we are.
Do you think, Yaya, that there's a chance that consolidation could happen within the banking industry as it currently exists? How is the banking industry globally responding to cryptocurrency? Is it something that it's embracing, or is it something that's big of a disruptor?
Generally, the banking industry is not embracing not cryptocurrency. I mean, there's some aspects of blockchain technology that some banks are embracing. That does happen, but for the most part, this is how I think what is happening. The consolidation is a good point. I do think that what's going to happen is that there's going to be consolidation in the crypto space as it gets more formalized, as bigger institutions get into it. Because I've seen this in my own, even in some of my own consulting, where if you're a big player and you want to create a product that more people are going to use that's related to cryptocurrencies, stable coins, for example, you figure out that you kind of have to, you can't do what the small startup does. You can't be totally anonymous. You can't do those things. So what I see is that the bigger players are going to figure out how to solve some of these problems, and they're going to adapt this technology. The other thing I would say, Matthew, for your point is, it's, yeah, the banks are not leading it, but I think the banks are going to unfortunately be forced into some of this innovation. Guess where it's going to come from? May come from central banks piloting digital currencies. So the central banks are actually trying to create their own digital currencies. And I think this is going to force the banks, because that sort of upends their business model. Anyway, I don't need to get into it, but they're not, it's a new business model if you're going to have a central bank digital money that I can hold directly. Like I can have digitally the Federal Reserve's like value, not cash. I mean, if cash, I have central bank money, but when I have a bank account, I don't have central bank money. I just have a relationship with Bank of America that tells me that they owe me the money that I deposited. That's something different. So a central bank digital currency is making banks think like, oh, then we're going to have to figure out something different. How will we be relevant if there's this new type of digital money? So I think that is going to impact innovation. I don't think everybody's going to use Bitcoin. El Salvador is trying to use Bitcoin. I don't think that's how most people are going to go, though.
And it's a huge paradigm shift, though, isn't it, right? Because we're at a point now where the country's run out of money, so let's print more, right? And we'll figure out the implications of that later on. If I'm not incorrect, there's a limited number of Bitcoin that can eventually be mined. Is that right?
Yeah.
And so there's a limit. There are intentional limits that are put on these different cryptocurrencies. What impact does that have on, and actually we've got some interesting questions coming in, people
Yeah.
asking about mining and the energy,
Okay.
energy uses and things like that, if you want to comment in that direction as well.
I would. I mean, I stayed away from that because, like, oh my goodness, you could go so deep with the technical. I actually have a way to explain blockchain that's great in person, because the way I explain it is, you have to think about a folder. So let's say I have a folder. The folder has a paper with transactions. So let's say we all have folders. All of our folders basically are going to hold this paper, and the paper is going to be a list of transactions, A to B, C to Z, this amount of money, right? And then we seal it, and we all seal that, and then we close it, and then we work on another folder. Same thing with the transactions. We seal it, and then we put that folder on top of this folder. What we're doing that's actually the process. I haven't explained the whole process, but that's the process of building a blockchain. The mining part of it comes in with, how do we decide which record is going to be the one that everyone duplicates? So there's this puzzle. I know someone asked a question about what are all these puzzles. I mean, come on, guys. If I had to go through like hashing algorithms, like you would be like, okay, your eyes would gloss over. So the simple thing is, there are these computer puzzles, and your computer, you try to solve the puzzle so that you can get rewarded, and then you get rewarded with some Bitcoin. And then everyone copies the transaction. They close the folders, and they attach the next folder, and it's this string of transactions that now, if you try to change some of the data, it messes the signature. It messes everything up. Again, I know I'm not explaining it everything, like we would probably have to go through it more, but the energy issue is that this consensus mechanism that it's called, where you do these puzzles, it takes a lot of computing power. So you'll have some hardware, and your computer's like trying to solve the problem. That's a lot of space. You got to have fans. You got to cool down the computers. That's the energy consumption in the quote unquote mining process. It's not really mining. We just call it mining, but it's the validation process. It is the computation process to keep the ledger going and valid.
Yeah, I remember, there used to be some sort of astronomy laboratory that would request use of your computer space. This was a number of years ago, right? So that they could explore the stars, and I don't know, right? They might have done it with like genome sequencing and other things too. And it's like, oh yeah, you know, for the good of science, right? I
Right.
looked into using my computer as a mining technology at one point. I need a much bigger piece of equipment there.
Right, right, right.
Um, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about
Mm.
regulation, which I know is
Yeah.
sort of the central aspect of what you look at with cryptocurrency. We have some questions coming in about why is cryptocurrency so hard to regulate? What is
Okay.
this? How do you do things like taxes? How do you tax cryptocurrency, right? How do you make sure that people are on the up and up with how they're using it? What would you say? Why is it so hard to regulate and take care of?
Well, it does pose some challenges. I won't fully say it's hard because most people don't realize the crypto space is very well regulated in many ways. So it depends which country, but let's talk about the US. So first of all, because there are different types of regulations. Are you talking about consumer protection? Are you talking about securities? Are you talking about commodities? Well, where the regulations are the clearest with crypto is with the anti-money laundering regulations. And that is actually, it's not as complicated as you would think, because here's the rule. Here's how it's regulated. If anybody wants to sell cryptocurrencies, you have to register with Treasury, with a certain agency, and you need to follow all the same banking regulations and banking laws that other financial institutions have to follow. So that makes it so that then when people come to you, you actually have to get their ID, you have to kind of monitor and make sure they're not doing something, suspicious, etc. So that is actually already there. Now, where's the challenge? The challenge comes from the fact that you can't operate outside of that regulated system. So why is that so hard? It's because this is open source software, folks. If I want to get a Bitcoin wallet, I don't have to go to Bank of America. I don't even have to go to Coinbase, which is a cryptocurrency exchange. If I wanted to, if I'm sort of tech savvy enough, I can download a non-custodial wallet, and then the government doesn't have access to it. And guess what? With cryptocurrencies, once you have access to your cryptocurrency wallet, no one can take that. The government cannot they cannot access your wallet unless they have the private key to your wallet. So this is a different type of system. This is like this open source software system. That's what makes it challenging. That's at least one of the things.
Oh, thanks so much. Yeah, it's we've got some additional questions coming in about this regulation piece, and specifically, and let's talk about those sort of illicit activities that are happening behind the scenes, whether they're coming from terrorist cells or others. And somebody wants to know, how do you shut this down if you're a national leader who is done with terrorist activities and ransomware and evading sanctions? How do you get behind the scenes and figure out what's going on and how to stop it?
Well, I thought you were, well, it depends on what you mean by stop it, because it depends on what type of country you are. Are you an authoritarian country? In China has actually been pretty effective, if I can use that term, at stopping the cryptocurrency space. So they were, for a lot of reasons, China has been cracking down, and for some of it is because there have been a lot of scams. I mean, when the Bitcoin price goes up, that's when the scams go up, right? So in a place like China, which has a lot of control, it can ban cryptocurrency exchanging, which it has. But if you're a national leader in a country like ours, that's not what we do. That's not the approach, right? So the U.S. approach is one of not trying to just ban the technology, because if you do that, here's the thing: the technology doesn't necessarily go away. You kind of just push it into the corners, the dark underground corners of your society or of your economy. The U.S. approach is regulate this, and let's bring the crypto space up so that it starts to follow the rules, and that it's more responsible, and that people do check suspicious activity and money laundering. That's the U.S. approach. Now there are these other challenges, but we can't just say, like, because these challenges we're going to have to get rid of crypto. I think the best route is to innovate and try to build regulations that can grapple with this, but that it takes time. And the SEC, the Securities Exchange Commission, and so and the some of the other regulators, they're struggling with this. They're trying to keep up, but the problem is the innovation sometimes is like 18 months ahead of the regulators, so they will be playing catch up.
What country would you say, Yaya, does the best job with putting these protocols and regulations in place? Is there one that stands out for you?
United States for anti-money laundering regulation. I don't even have to hesitate. And here's the proof. And there's, like I said, there's different types of regulations, but for the anti-money laundering, counter-terrorist financing, and even sanctions, it was the United States, because Treasury in 2013, this is like when most people hadn't heard of crypto, Treasury put out guidance telling people that if they're in the U.S. jurisdiction, they have to register in order to be a cryptocurrency exchange. The rest of the world, even Europe, I did a study that looked at data from 2013 to 2016 Bitcoin transactions, and in the study we assessed by looking at the data that there was a lower percentage of illicit activity in North American crypto compared to European crypto exchanges. Why? Because the US had regulation since 2013. The rest of the world didn't, and still is struggling. So that's one place I actually give the United States like maybe an A minus, for I mean, it's hard to get an A. I'm a former teacher from back in the day, so I give the United States an A minus in terms of regulating crypto, because other countries weren't doing what we did, almost 8 years ago.
Where's the bulk of crypto being used? Is this individuals who have ownership over this? Are these businesses, or these governments, or other entities?
I think it's mostly individual speculation. You have a lot of, I mean, we have something called, they call them crypto whales. Whales are people that have massive amount of crypto. Like, think of that guy that did the pizza, who maybe had like, 1,000 Bitcoin back then. Now now he's a billionaire or whatever, if he held on to his crypto. But most of the activity is simply people buying and trading because they think the value will go up, or selling it. That's most of what's happening now, and speculation, really.
We do have one more technical question for you. We have somebody concerned about someone hacking into his Bitcoin account. Is that possible? You're talking about passwords and things earlier. Is that something that people have to worry about?
It is, and it kind of depends what type of wallet or sort of account that you have, because the key when you use these exchanges, they take care of your private key. So if someone hacks into that exchange and it's the exchange's fault, they're gonna probably compensate you, most likely, if you have an account on an exchange. But here's what's risky. Let's say you don't have one of those exchanges. Let's say you just have your own Bitcoin wallet that you manage. If someone, let's say they hack into your computer, they steal your private keys, and they open up your wallet and they steal your crypto, you can look on the blockchain and you can see the transaction. You can see now, oh, my crypto went to this wallet, but there's nothing you can do to get it back. You can call the police and say, here, look at this transaction. This is where it is. Unless they have access to that thief's wallet, or to like his or her private key, then they can't get that Bitcoin or that crypto back. So it's and that's maybe one of the reasons why some of the adoption has been a little difficult, because if you're going to manage, like, you need somebody to manage crypto for you. If you're just a novice, it's a little bit complicated when you like try to host everything yourself.
Yeah, if you would talk a little bit about what a digital dollar looks like. One of the questions that's been coming up is, where does traditional printed currency, minted currency go from here? Are we still going to take out our paper money at some point? How does a digital dollar work? Is this similar to Apple Pay and Google Pay and things that we have on our phone right now?
Well, the question about how does it work is TBD, is to be determined, because right now all that's happening with central bank digital currencies is explorations, research papers, and a handful of pilots. Even China's, which they haven't like released all the code, so we don't know fully how it works with China. It's not a blockchain, but it's a digital currency that the central bank controls, and all of these are it's unclear, because the design has to be worked out. I will tell you like what's one model that people are proposing. One model is that, let's say, the Federal Reserve would create some sort of digital dollar, and then it would give it, it wouldn't give it directly to the public. It would give it to financial institutions, tech payment companies. And then you, the customer, would go to those companies and get the digital dollar. So like they would give you a wallet. So it would kind of, there maybe the experience would be like a Venmo in terms of the user experience. You're going to this company and they're giving it. But why would it be different? It would be different because instead of with Venmo and PayPal, where they have the money and you're just like operating with the liability with them, with a digital dollar, they would be hosting something that is intrinsically belongs to the central bank. And when they give it to you, you actually hold, you have possession of the digital dollar. That's the difference. And it would also, here's another thing to think about, like why it would be different. So you know how, Matthew, if you have Venmo and I have Zelle or Cash App, I can't pay you in like your app, right? Like we both have to have Venmo. If there were a digital dollar, I think what it would mean is that now this digital dollar would hopefully be interoperable. So maybe I'm using PayPal or I'm using Cash App, but the digital dollar itself is interoperable. So I could send it to you on Venmo, and you can still pay. That might help. Who would that help? That might help merchants because it might reduce the fees that we have with digital transactions because we have this clunky, siloed banking system. So merchants are paying however many percent on accepting credit cards, accepting digital transactions. One proposal is that this would make it like easier, more effective and more efficient so that merchants wouldn't lose so much money on these digital transactions.
We do have a question here about how crypto affects retail businesses. And it
Okay.
sounds like I mean, from your point of view, it sounds like it might be a net positive.
Well, that's what people hope. So retail businesses, there are more of them that are accepting crypto. I mean, there are the most the challenge is that most people don't just have their Bitcoin, and most people don't want to pay. Like if Bitcoin is going up and down, are you going to want to pay your lunch? Are you going to want to go to Burger King and spend X amount of Bitcoin when the price of Bitcoin might go up once you finish your meal? But there are people who are, or there are actually companies that are like Bitcoin payment processors. So if you're a merchant, you can say like, hey, you don't know much about crypto. You can hire a company and they will give you the tools so that you don't do anything. You just put the little thing on your website, and then people who want to pay crypto can just go, and then you get the money in regular dollars and they process it for you. You do have that. That is becoming more common. I wouldn't say it's fully mainstream.
And I will say, Yaya, in case people are wondering, the International Relations Council is a nonprofit organization. We do gladly accept donations in whatever form you might like to make
Ah,
them. So
oh, great.
happy to have that conversation. Let's talk a little bit about the developing world, if we could.
Yeah.
Technological leapfrogging is a reality in a lot of the developing world where you may not have basic infrastructure, but you do have technology that comes in and can disrupt situations in really interesting ways. How do you see Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies functioning in places that may still be developing in a lot of ways?
Well, it's a double-edged sword because a lot of people will say, you will hear people say that, well, Bitcoin and crypto will help in those countries that maybe don't have the, good economic systems or monetary systems. But here's the challenge there, that like people point to Venezuela or places that maybe have suffered a disaster, or Zimbabwe. But the challenge there is that, yeah, maybe Bitcoin may be better than the Zimbabwe dollar, which is having trouble, or you mentioned Argentina, which has had a lot of inflationary, a lot of financial woes. But I don't think this solves the problem. I think, if you're a nation state, whether developing or advanced or whatever, it's important to have a strong currency, right? It's important to have a monetary system that you can sort of control and manage. So it may help people in the short term, but I actually think there are bigger macroeconomic issues. So I'm actually one of the people who don't think that crypto is going to be a panacea for the developing world. You have to sort of solve some of these broader issues, I think. That's my take.
That's great. We have a question here that sort of sums things up pretty well, I think, about what might
Mm.
be a lot of people's look at cryptocurrency. Do I have to be concerned about cryptocurrency if I'm not invested in one? I think you've made the case tonight that folks should be concerned about it, even if it's not something that they're personally working with.
I think that you should follow this. So it depends on what you mean by concern. I mean, I don't think you should be, sleeping. Hopefully this presentation isn't going to keep you up at night tonight, folks, because you're worried about cryptocurrencies and all the threats. That's not what I wanted to share. I think though you should be focused on something I did mention at the beginning, which is there are new forms of digital money, and that this will impact you. I mean, I'm pretty sure. And it's funny, I don't make predictions because obviously I can't see the future, and it's you can't say what's going to happen. But I'm going to throw out something at least so you all can see if it comes true or not. If it doesn't, oh well. Here's my prediction. My prediction is that the next presidential election, the US getting a central bank digital currency is going to be a campaign issue. I actually think I testified before Congress just last week on central bank digital currencies before the House Financial Services Committee. And it wasn't an education thing where we were like explaining what a central bank digital currency is. The Hill already knows what they've for years been doing hearings. And unfortunately it was a partisan issue, right? Which we don't like, that you had different sides of the aisles having different takes on should the US come up with a digital dollar. We're at the beginning of this discussion. In September, the Fed is expected to release a discussion paper, its first research paper and discussion paper on central bank digital currency. So this is going to be the first time that we're going to see officially, like, what does the Fed really think about this? So that's happening in sort of late 2021. My thought is that 2022, people are going to like be figuring out what a digital dollar is. They're going to be like getting into it. And I think, sort of 2023, politically, this is going to become an issue. People are going to be debating it. And I think, by the election, we'll like have different camps about the US CBDC. Plus China will have rolled out its digital currency more by then.
Yeah. Final question for you. What does international cooperation in this space look like, specifically around regulation? Or is this something that countries are cooperating on just as they would any other intelligence issue, or is there some reluctance because it deals with economic issues?
There is a lot of collaboration amongst intergovernmental bodies. There's actually something called the Financial Action Task Force, FATF. That's a global standard-setting body that every country sort of is a part of, or sort of relates to. This body basically tells countries how they need to manage their financial system with relation to anti-money laundering. That body has actually put out within the past 2 years regulations or standards, I should say, that each country should follow. The challenge is in implementing it. So there's already sort of a consensus that, hey, this is how we should regulate crypto. At least these are the general principles. But the next task is making sure that every country is doing that. Because if I'm in the US, I can always just go hop over to Malta or the Seychelles and use their exchange that's not as well regulated, right? So that's the challenge that we have.
Yeah. Yaya Fanusie, Adjunct Senior Fellow at the Center for a New American Security. So grateful to have you with us today. What an exploration of an issue that is evolving pretty rapidly, and we'll be here to follow it in the months and years ahead. Thank you so much for your time and expertise.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Everybody, thank you for joining us this evening. We hope you enjoyed this program. Do check out other upcoming events with the International Relations Council at irckc.org. Thanks so much, and we'll see you soon.